You're listening to the Christian Indie Artists and Songwriters podcast, the place where faith, music, and life intersect. We exist to help Christian indie artists and songwriters just like you get songs heard. Hey, I'm here with my friend Kristen, coming to us live from California. How's it going in Cali this afternoon?
Hey, Brian, it's going awesome. It's beautiful out here. I can't complain.
Awesome. And you guys just basically moved there within the past couple of weeks, yeah?
Yeah. So my husband is in the Navy. I'm a military spouse, and we just moved here from Memphis. We had the privilege of being in Memphis for about a year and headed out west just, I guess, 2 weeks ago tomorrow.
Wow. Well, thanks so much for your service and your sacrifice and all the things you're doing to keep us safe. So that's amazing and an honor to talk to you today. I know your story a little bit, but I'd love for you to kind of share like how you got into music in the first place. Where did it all kind of start for you?
So kind of how I got started is when I was little, my house was just filled with country music. It was just something we listened to, something we loved, and it was always on. I didn't really start going to church until I was 10 years old. And I remember when I was 5, I got my first guitar ever for Christmas. And there's a video out there somewhere of me singing George Strait, Cross My Heart from the movie Pure Country.
All right.
And I'm just like,
in the bio.
Yeah, a great song. Love George Strait. And of course, I wasn't playing the actual chords, but I was just going to town like that was my song. And that was just kind of the beginning of just music. I just loved it. I knew I enjoyed singing. Fast forward to 4th grade is when I really started singing in church. And I think my first church solo was this like candy cane song, like it was Christmas time and, red and white stripes, like Jesus blood. And it was like just this moment. And that's when I first started singing in church. And I was really fortunate to grow up in a church that celebrated music and celebrated children and youth and adults all singing in music. And their arts ministry was great. And there was just a lot of opportunity to jump in as a young person. So learning how to lead worship there, learning how to craft, singing. And we traveled around to some different places for mission trips and things. At the same time, I was also singing at school, did all the choirs there, contests and things like that. But I was 16 years old when I specifically remember sitting in my room and I was listening to Darlene Check, and man, she's just like a hero to me. And just listening to her lead worship, I was really kind of struggling on identity and my place in the world, how I kind of fit into it all. And the Lord just spoke to me in a very real way. And he was like, I want you leading worship. And he gave me a vision for what that might look like. And in that moment, I wrote my first song from beginning to end. I was 16 years old, and I really didn't do anything with it until I went to college as far as that song goes. But when I was a senior in high school, I didn't have any big plans. I had looked into colleges and stuff. I didn't really have the money to go to college. There wasn't really the kind of support there is now as far as financial aid and things. And so it's just different. But I got this call from a friend that said, hey, there's this ministry team that's traveling. I think you should try out. And I was like, sure, let's do it. So I auditioned for this ministry team and I made it. And 2 weeks after I graduated high school, I moved to Tennessee. And so I spent 2 years with them, 1 year singing in their theater program and another year traveling on the road, and just learned a lot in that time, really grew a lot, and found myself in college after that, jumped into some worship bands and singing there as well. Yeah, I continued to write in that time, ended up doing some co-writes with friends, and it was just a really special time. I met my husband while I was in college, and we got married in 2010. After that, it was really like a 5-year time period where I didn't really do anything with music. I found myself, being a military spouse, and we're moving around a lot, and I was just like, gosh, like, how do I do music? How do I like jump into a church, or how do I write? I don't know anybody, we're always moving around. At that time, social media was nowhere as big as it is now. And so I just kind of got into a really dark place. We ended up having a twin miscarriage early on in our marriage, because we lost the twins, and I suffered pretty badly physically after that, trying to heal from that, and had a lot of complications. My husband went on deployment, and so I was just kind of alone, and just really feeling like, okay, Lord, like, why is all this happening? And I just don't feel like I can do the things you've called me to do, and I'm hurting. And I sunk so deep into depression and anxiety that I just found myself saying, you wake up, you live your life, and one day you die. And that was it. There was no like middle for me. It was just, you wake up and you die one day, and it's all over. That's all I could see. And finally, as I was like starting to come out of that, I got some counseling and some professional help. We got involved into a church, and I just really just felt the presence of the Lord so close. He was always there for me. And he really, through him and counseling and my husband and the support of our church, just like I was able to walk through that. Shortly after, I kind of got back on my feet after that, we moved up to Maryland, and I joined staff at a church. My husband was stationed up there, and I started serving actually as a volunteer at this church. They needed some extra help in their worship department, so I jumped in, and I was able to work there for a few years. I did more writing there than I ever had in my life. I just felt this. There were many people around me that were hurting and struggling, and I had just come out of this really dark place. And so the Lord was just giving me these songs, and he was like, you need to encourage these people right where you are. Like, there is a song for your community. There's a song for these people here. And so it really cultivated this passion of the fact that it's so important that we write songs for our community. We write songs over our specific churches, and then give them out to the world, of course, but we have songs that we can share with the people in our lives. And so that's kind of where I started doing that. And it just has kind of gone on from there. I released my first couple singles in 2019, and another coming out later this month.
Wow, that's amazing. And thanks for sharing that, because that's coming out of that difficult season, dark season. I know that, my wife and I, we went through a couple miscarriages as well. And one was our first. So that, especially from the mom side, I can only imagine how, dark that time, and then to kind of be left, with the deployment. So that's a tough season to work through. So that's awesome that God was able to kind of lead you through that, through help, professional help, like you mentioned too, but then kind of restored you to that, your passion, of the thing where you heard when you're 16, where, because obviously if you're thinking, you're basically biding time, you live and then you die, like you're not really thinking about that 16-year-old passion promise thing. But then, so for that to kind of turn back around is incredible. And just, one of those things, being reminded of God's faithfulness, because when he says it, even if it seems crazy at the time, it's like he always comes through with that. So what was that like? What were those songs like that you were sharing? And that's, and too, if you don't mind going into like any kind of detail about like working at the church, and like, were they like encouraging you to write and share original songs, like, or was it more just you were bringing that, or like what was that dynamic like for you?
Yeah. So one thing I never stopped doing is I never stopped journaling. I'm a huge journaler. I'm a big time coffee person. So typically, like, one of my favorite things to do early in the morning is, grabbing my coffee, sitting down with my journal and my Bible, and just pouring over pages. And so in that particular season, one miracle that God spoke to me was in my prayer time, you're going to have a daughter and you should name her Nora. And at that time, I wasn't pregnant. My husband was on deployment, and all I know is I was alone and just kind of heartbroken. Well, now we have my daughter. She's 7 years old, and her name is Nora. And so when I knew that his promises to me were true, he showed himself so clearly to me. I kind of had both sides of the writing. I had the darkness and depression, and then the hope and the glory and the fulfilled promise, So that's kind of where the writing went. And when I moved up to Maryland and I was working at the church, I brought the ideas and to them that, I kind of wanted to move in that direction. And it was something, they were really excited about. And I was still writing, from home, and it was just this new thing for the church. I know a lot of churches now release their own music, but even still for a lot of churches, it's still a very new thing. But I was so passionate that I believe that what God was crafting on our team was to build songs to write and to minister to our church. We had just gone through so many seasons of ministry while we were there. And it was kind of let's do it. And so we were able to have our first co-write meeting. And I had no idea what I was doing. I set up this co-write meeting, and I think I had 10 people there, and I had no idea what it would take to actually craft a song with other people. Cause at this point, it was just me, writing. And so it kind of opened up the door to what that might look like, and inspired, I think, some ideas for other people in that group. And it wasn't much longer after that we got orders to go to Memphis. So I wasn't really able to see that plan through, but I'm excited to see that I've been working with a friend who, crazy enough, she was going to church there in Maryland. I moved away. We knew each other from there. I moved away to Memphis. I had been living in Memphis for about 7 months, and she called me up one day and she was like, hey, just kind of out of the blue. She called me and she's like, hey, I have this idea. I feel like God's putting some songs on my heart. Would you be interested in working with me? And I was like, yeah, I didn't even, skip a beat. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And from there, we were able to craft some songs, and one of which that church in Maryland is working to do soon for their congregation. So it's just amazing to see how God's promises for what he had spoke over me in that season are still coming true there. And now, continuing to write even more songs with my friend. Her name is Tish DeVertiel, and we've just built this beautiful friendship, but also this great co-writing relationship. And it's just been really exciting.
That's so amazing. I can't help but think of Moses, the promised land. And I know obviously it's not the same for you because you moved on to a different area, not moved on to heaven yet, but,
right. Yeah.
But the songs and the promises that started there are happening, even though you're not there physically. So that is incredible in testament to God's promises. So you mentioned you released a couple singles, so what kind of took you from that whole progression from, writing to leading worship to starting kind of that writing culture to actually releasing stuff as an artist? What was that journey like for you?
Well, it just kind of happened really organically. During my time in Maryland, God had put me in community with just some really talented musicians, producers, and friends who believed in me and who saw something in my music. And as I kind of opened up and said, hey, I've got this idea, would you be willing to help me kind of see this song through? That's exactly what they did. And I fumbled my way across learning the steps. I would be of how to release a song. It was a totally new journey for me. And I'm just trying to figure out what to do. How much do you pay a musician? How much do you pay, what does this even look like? And we got it done. And I was so excited to be able to release those singles. Actually, I don't think they released until after we moved. It was just a really unique time. I think it's hard, when you're releasing your first couple songs, because it takes a lot out of you to really open up your heart to the world and go, well, I don't know if they're going to love it. I don't know if they're going to hate it, but God's telling me to do this. So here we go, and I hope that they're encouraged by it. And just the feedback that we've gotten has just been tremendous. So that was a really exciting time.
That's awesome. So, and then actually learning how to physically like distribute, because there's a lot of steps to do all that. So getting through all those pieces of it, God will just continue to use that. So, and I always tell people too, like, it can be tough to get those first couple songs out, especially the first one, because all the steps and all that. But like once you get it, you kind of get it. Sometimes it can be a stumbling block, because it's like, well, how do I get it on Spotify? Like, what's the magic, thing you got to do for all that? So that's amazing that you had people kind of around you to help get that all together. So your story has been, it's amazing, like you get called to a place and then you start something. And then you kind of move on, but then that seed blooms, even this, we were just talking before we started, even the next song that you are, coming out with next, like you wrote it when you were in Tennessee, and now it's, but through Tish that you met in Maryland, and then it's going to release when you're in California. So it's always
it's crazy.
It's like God makes these promises and then you just faithfully say yes. And then typically after you leave the place he gave you the promise, then it's comes to fruition. So that's amazing. And that's a unique perspective to always just kind of say yes and don't necessarily have to, it's not going to instantly happen this moment maybe, but it'll always see its way through. So something else we were talking about before, and I guess so kind of lean into the giving some advice to your past self. But if you want to put those two things together, but we were talking about just the community that you've kind of recently found through like social media and stuff. So talk a little bit about that. Like how has that kind of helped you keep moving, even though like you might physically move around quite a bit? Like how has that helped kind of collect your thoughts and your vision on your music journey in general?
Man, it's been tremendous to have this online community. When I first released the couple singles in 2019, I was in the Song Chasers group, which I think is now like Full Circle, community or something like that.
Learning community, yeah.
Yeah, Full Circle learning community. So I was in that, seeing people share, and I'm like reading their feedback and watching their questions. I was kind of like the silent observer. Like I didn't really like ask a lot of the questions. I didn't put my material out there, but I'm just kind of like looking over the page and going, oh, okay, yeah, I need to do that. I need to do this. And so I was really just like learning from all these people. And it was in one of those groups that I think you and I connected. And I waited I guess about a year or so to really reach out about your song production services. But I just knew, I felt like the Lord was like, okay, reach out to him, see if he can do this song. And just kind of went from there. But joining this indie community online has just been unreal. Like what a blessing. Here I am, I'm turning 35 years old this year. And in a lot of worship circles, I would be, quote, aged out of the process. I would be too old for the frontline team, and I would be systematically kind of placed back, into another ministry. But this community online has just given me such a fresh wind of like, if God's given you words to share, if he's given you a word to share over your community or over your family or whatever through music, like you can do that. And you don't ever age out of art. As long as there's still breath in your lungs and you have that word to share from him, it's yours to share, and it's our duty to share. What he's given to us, we should give back to him, and then he's going to bless his people. And so it's my honor. It's to be able to do that is just so life-giving, whether it's on, a major platform or not. We just give back to him what he's gifted to us. So this community has just been so transformative to me. I've learned so much. I've been absolutely encouraged. It's just been a blessing.
That's so good. Yeah. I've heard it said like God's gift to us is life, and giving it back to him is our gift to him, and I've always, I love that idea, like glory to glory. Right. So that's really good. So I always love to ask people, what would you give piece of advice to your younger self, to Kristen, maybe at 16 years old, or maybe at 20, or any point in your life, that you think would be a good encouragement for the audience. And then also just, for your past self, as you've learned a ton along the way.
Yeah. So just in a quick sentence, it would be to keep going. I have a short story I wanted to share with you. Recently, when we moved from Memphis to California, we took some time to make some stops along the way. We stopped at Petrified Forest and Grand Canyon and all that. One place we stopped was Walnut Canyon National Monument. And it's just this beautiful scenery. It's just gorgeous, but it's a straight shot down through 700 plus steps. It's a 1 mile round trip. You go around these ancient cliff dwellings, and then it is straight back up on these 700 plus steps. So at the top of the canyon, there's a sign that says going down is optional, going up is mandatory. So I knew it. I'm like, okay, we're going to fly down this thing and it's going to be a climb coming back up, but we got to do it. So we go down and we're just flying down this canyon. I mean, 700 steps. I mean, we're racing it straight down, and I wasn't too out of breath yet, but we're just like coming around the bend. My son, who is terrified of cactuses, like he's 5, he sees some cactuses and he starts freaking out. Like he flipped. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't breathe. And now I've got to carry my 5-year-old son. Like, my husband is holding the baby, and I'm like, we got to do this thing. And so my lungs were on fire. So we get to the bottom of this canyon and I'm just looking straight up. I mean, this climb is just ridiculous. And I'm telling my son, I'm like, you got to go ahead. Like mom's it's going to be a minute. Meanwhile, there's like people like lapping me, like they're just like going up, and, maybe a little bit embarrassed, but I'm like, whatever, like I can barely breathe. So I started taking some steps and I see a bench and I sat and I caught my breath, took a few more steps, and I sat down, caught my breath. And every few steps, I was just like sitting down, catch my breath, take a few more steps. And I didn't stop. And I finally got to the top and I just looked down and I was like, this is it. Like, if you really want to get where you're going, you have to put one foot in front of the other. That's a word that God has spoken over me all year long. Put one foot in front of the other. Keep going. Don't stop. One foot in front of the other. And so just getting to the top of that canyon and realizing, like, even though the breath was like crushing and I just could not catch my breath, I had breath in my lungs the whole time. Like he was absolutely sustaining me. I was alive, even though I felt terrible, but I still made it. And I just felt, that's just a word for all of us, that just keep going, put one foot in front of the other, no matter how daunting it looks. Like he's going to see you through. And he always works things out for our good.
I was thinking about this equation that we have, that perseverance plus patience equals success. And like, that's such a perfect example of that, because you knew you had to get up, but you were patient enough to take the breaks you needed to, but the whole focus was like, you were going to do it. It didn't matter how long it took. It didn't matter, if you felt like you said, might have felt embarrassed or whatever you might have felt, but like ultimately, like you knew that this is how you're going to get up that mountaintop, and that's how you're going to do it. And you didn't stop until you got, and like, how amazing was it when you finally got to the top? I mean, it was probably pretty amazing.
It was amazing. I mean, the elevation was just crazy. And I mean, we had, like I said, we had just come from Memphis. So it, elevation there compared to like where we were in Arizona was pretty drastic difference. And so I just was not prepared for that. And not to mention, we like sprinted down into this canyon and then came to the top. But, we finished and it was fun. The views were breathtaking, but to really get to that place, we're going to have some bumps and bruises along the way. We're going to lose our breath. We're going to feel like we've been kicked, 1, 2, maybe several times. And we've all felt that way. But the point is, we just don't stop. We have to keep going. At the end of the day, if we don't stop, all the glory, honor, and praise is for him. It's due to him. And it's our job to keep walking in that and towards that.
So I know that you mentioned it before, before we wrap up, I always like to have people talk about, something they're excited about with their music. So, talk about this song Consume Me. It's when we air this, it's going to come out. It'll be coming out this coming Friday. So tell the people about Consume Me.
Yeah, we're so excited. So like I said, I co-wrote this with my friend Tish DeVertil, and she is just a gift, man. I know that when God spoke these words to her, it was just meant to come out as a song. And when she shared the idea with me, I'm like, we got to do this. And so here we are, it's coming out. It's all about God just really speaking that peace, speaking his truth, being able to live in that and recognizing like, hey, like what you want is what I want. And then moving forward in that. So we're super excited. Yeah, it comes out on October 23rd, and it'll be available on all platforms.
Awesome. Well, I'll link up your Spotify and everything to this, note. So that way when it comes out, they'll be able to already be following you, because that's what they should definitely do is follow your Spotify account. So they'll be notified as soon as the song comes out. But what other ways, where do you like to hang out social media wise? How can people connect with you?
Yeah. So my favorite place is Instagram. You can find me at kpenn_music. So that's KPENN_music on Instagram. And you can also find me on Facebook at Kristen Nicole.
Awesome. And before we go, I always like to pray over everybody. So I want to do that. God, thank you so much for Kristen. Thank you so much for her faithfulness and her willingness to keep going. This journey is not been, it's never easy, and her and her husband and family have gone through some really tough things, Lord, some tough seasons, some tough just circumstances, God. But your faithfulness has just continued to give them breath in their lungs to chase after all the things you're doing, Lord. Thank you for the promises that you put in her heart and her willingness to continue to persevere for that. As they enter into this brand new season, this new town, who knows the promises you'll give to her now that will come maybe to fruition. Who knows after they leave? But no matter what the case is, God, I just pray for fresh inspiration and creativity and motivation and inspiration to her to continue to chase after all the things that you've put in front of her. God, just inspire her, just be evident in all the things that her and her family are doing. God, keep them safe. And thank you for their sacrifices they've done to just as a family unit to protect our country, God, and all the things that they're doing to glorify you, Lord. We thank you so much. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Brian.
We want to help reach as many Christian indie artists and songwriters as possible, and one way we can do that is with your help. So if you could take a minute and leave us a review on iTunes, that would be so appreciated. This is how the iTunes algorithm will push this content out to more and more Christian indie artists and songwriters. So like I said, if you could just take a couple seconds, leave us a review, that would be so awesome, means so much to us, and we would really appreciate it.